Hello, I'd like to welcome you back to the channel. Today we're actually on location, coming at you poolside from lovely Las Terrenas in the Dominican Republic. And as always, I want to welcome you to the channel. My channel is entitled Family Let's Talk About Money, and it's brought to you by my insurance company, which is AIC, stands for Artist Insurance Consultants. And I just want to take a moment and thank those that have been calling to get their quotes and their insurance policies. It's been our pleasure to help you out. Now, for those that are new to the station, I'd like to kind of explain what the station is all about. The premise of this station is I invite you to come sit at my dinner table and we talk about things that will help you make better financial decisions. What the goal is that we start having these discussions at my dinner table, and you'll start having them at yours until we're having them all throughout our community. Now, everybody's invited to the table, but the primary focus of these discussions will be directed to those in the Black community. And this is because other communities have been having these discussions for years around their dinner tables. And the reason that we haven't is because historically we haven't had generational wealth to pass down, so we don't commonly talk about finances. And when I say this is not a knock on the Black community, because there's reasons why we haven't had generational wealth to pass down. Huge reasons are the U.S. government has had programs that have helped the white community build generational wealth. And we too would have benefited from these programs, but yet we were excluded from them. I want to talk about one of those programs tonight, the GI Bill. It's interesting that the U.S. government understood the importance of helping the returning veterans to get off to a good start. So when the brave soldiers of World War II came back at the end of the war, they wanted to help them get a good start, so they passed a bill called the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, which is more commonly known as the GI Bill. Now, the GI Bill provided benefits in three areas. First, funding college or trade schools. Then, home loans. And the third benefit was unemployment insurance. But, as we said, once again, the Black community was left out of this program. Yes, the Black vets returning from World War II were left out of the GI Bill. Now, while the GI Bill's language did not specifically exclude Black veterans from its benefits, it was structured in a way that ultimately shut the door to the 1.2 million Black veterans. Now let's take a look and examine these benefits a little closer. Let's start with education. Now, before World War II, a college education was out of reach for the average American. But the GI Bill flung the doors to universities and vocational schools wide open with benefits that covered tuition, books, supplies, and even offered a stipend, a living stipend. And by 1956, which was 11 or 12 years after the program started, well, nearly 8 million vets had used the GI Bill education benefits. Over 2 million attended colleges and universities, and just under 6 million for some kind of training program. Another popular benefit offered through the GI Bill was low interest home loans. The VA home loan benefit granted 4.3 million low interest, zero down payment home loans between 1945 and 1955. Veterans starting families snapped up the home loans and moved to the suburbs. New suburbs sprang up in mass-produced subdivisions all around the country, and veterans became the largest single group of homeowners. The third benefit was that a vet would receive unemployment compensation for 1 year after returning. So how did the GI Bill affect the American economy? Well, home loans increased demand for housing, which led to massive construction and suburban growth. And college enrollment was greatly increased. The GI Bill was responsible for creating the American middle class. Yes, for every dollar invested in the GI Bill, the government received $7 back in economic growth. Yes, this may have been the best piece of legislation ever written by the U.S. government. So why do I bring this up? Well, the reason I give the history is so that we can understand why we're in the situation that we're in. But that's not where we stop. No, we look for solutions. And so often we act like that we are in the same predicament that our ancestors were in. And that's just not the case. So what we want to do now is talk about how we can help our young people get off to a good start. Let's look at a couple examples. One thing that we could do is, instead of our children graduating high school or coming home from college and just going off and starting their lives, why don't we, as parents, and if we're able to do this, why not have our kids sit down and talk to our children and tell them, look, now I've taken care of you for this long. I've taken care of the food, the house, and everything else. How about, now that you've gone out and got a job, how about you stay here for the next 2 years? I'll continue to cover all the expenses. Nothing changes on my part. But you work your tail off and you bank money like crazy. Let's say he makes $500, got a job and he makes $500 a week. We're talking about $2,000 a month. Well, in 2 years, that's over $48,000. You're talking about almost $50,000. And then, we encourage that kid too. Now, hey, these 2 years is going to be about work and saving. So if overtime's available on that job, you work all the overtime you can. You bank as much money as you can these first 2 years. And if it's not a good paying job, well, hey, you're young and healthy. Why not work too? Or work that job and have a side hustle. Focus those 2 years on making as much money as you can while you don't have expenses. So now after 2 years, well, that child has $50,000 in the bank. So now when they leave your house, see, we make it clear you're not leaving here to pay rent to nobody. No, you got money, you're going to purchase you a home. And really, I would encourage them to purchase a multi-level home if they could. A duplex, triplex, a quad. The reason why is everything is the same as a single family dwelling. You can still put 3% down as long as that's your primary residence. So you have to live there for a year. You only have to live there for a year. So if you could get a duplex, purchase that, have a renter on one side, they're paying your mortgage. You're living free, just like you was when you still at mom and dad's house. So now you're still banking money. You live there for 1 year, you do that again. Now, let's say you're unable to find a home that's a multifamily home. Okay, well, you start looking for a home that will be a good rental property. See, so when you're purchasing a home, you're looking that I want to get a good rental property. You get in there, you move into that, you live there a year, you go buy another house, you rent that one out. You do that the next year. You do that for the next 4 years. And by the time let's say we started at 18, by the time you're 25, you own 4 properties, and now you're ready to move into the house that you plan on living in. And then the beauty of it is your rental properties are paying for the house that you'll be living in. So you'll still be living free in that property the rest of your life. So these are the type of things that we want to start talking to our children about. We want to change the game a little bit. So let's use another example. What about a young couple that's about to get married? Now, I encourage young couples, especially if you're living in one apartment, she's living in another apartment. You got the means to cover all your expenses, and the other one has the means to cover all their expenses. Well, when you move in together, don't say, hey, with our combined income, we could go get a big old monster house, a $400,000 house. That's not the way you want to think. No, I encourage couples about to get married, if y'all can both live on your own income in the two places, moving into one place, the only difference is just a little bit more food. So you could literally live off of one income. One income pays all the bills, the other income goes into saving big time. Do that for 2 years, then it's set up the same way. Start looking to get out and get you a rental property. You're not gonna get the house you want right off the bat. See, that's gonna be your long-term goal. And when I say long-term, we're only talking about 5 years. And I know when you're 25 years seems like a long time, believe me. It goes by very quick, and you would be able to live the next 60, 70 years the way that you want to because of a 5-year sacrifice. This is the way we gotta start thinking. One income, save money, and when you make that first purchase, make it a rental property. Build wealth. You want to be able to, it's called making money while you sleep. See, I'm in the Dominican Republic right now. It's the 2nd or 3rd, I'm not even sure. You know, when you're on vacation, you don't know what day it is. But it's either the 2nd or 3rd of the month. And I'm getting cash apps where people are paying their rent for the properties that I own. See, I love to see that money coming in. That's the way we have to start thinking. And we got to do this at the beginning. Because if you do it at the beginning, then this just becomes a way of life. And there's always money there. But if you jump out and leave home and you go out, you start paying rent, you know, you're buying cars, and you're getting in debt, and you'll never be able to get caught up. So that's why we want to get them off to a good start. Also, this might sound a little crazy, but even that married couple, can you go back and stay with mom and dad for a year? Here again, now you're banking 2 incomes. And so now, when you're ready to leave mom and dad to make that first purchase, you may have $70, $80, $100,000 in the bank. Just from banking everything for 1 year, just 1 year, staying with mom and dad. So if we can do this, these are the type of things we need to be talking to our children about, making plans to do these things to help them get off to a good start. Now also on this channel, if you're new to the channel, you'll see that I look at other communities. If other communities are doing things right, hey, I point it out and encourage us to do these things in our communities. So I'm going to be looking at a couple other communities this evening. We're going to start out with our Latino brothers and sisters. Now, if you go back a few years, we used to laugh at our Latino brothers and sisters talking about all them people in one house. They got 25 people living in there. Well, when they had 25 people living in there, that might have meant that they were paying $25 a month for rent, and they were banking everything else. And so after they stayed there a year or so, they were able to come out of there, purchase homes, purchase businesses. And we look back over the years, their community is doing far better than ours. so we can say who's laughing now. So we need to think about things like that. Can we get with family members, all of us stay in one location, and cut the cost for everybody so that everybody in there is building wealth, building income, so that they can leave there, start making home purchases, business purchases, and start actually building wealth? It's interesting that, you know, we may think, well, nah, I can't be doing that, man. Them folks be getting on my nerves. Well, don't you think that folks were getting on our Latino brothers' nerves? That's just human nature. But a person that is focused on a goal, see, they do not allow minor obstacles to get in their way. And so that's the way we need to look at that. Us staying in a place with all our crazy cousins or family members or whatever is a long-term, we're doing this for our long-term goal. And when we're focused on that goal, well, then we'll say, I can put up with this for a little while because I know when I leave here, I'm purchasing a rental property and I'm on my way. I'm gonna have money in the bank and I'm gonna be able to do what I want to do. So here again, we need to look at that differently. And it's interesting, it's because I read a statistic that said at the rate that the wealth in the black community keeps going down, it says that we will actually be, in the next 10 to 20 years, we will be living like this in our communities out of necessity. So instead of waiting until we have to live like this out of necessity, why not do it now and use this as a way of building income so that we can build wealth? Another community I want to look at is our Jewish brothers and sisters. I was visiting a friend in New York City, a Jewish man, and he was a big time New York City lawyer, and he lived in this really amazing loft. And we were on the back side of the loft, and I saw that there was actually another apartment attached to the loft. And I seen it, you know, it had its own entrance and everything. And I seen another gentleman, and, you know, they hollered at each other. And I was like, oh, so you got rental property? He said, it's not really rental property. He says, how it works is, he's a young man that's staying there. He's a young Jewish attorney. And, you know, what we try to do is help him out. So, you know, he started with the firm. I helped provide this place for him. He was either charging next to nothing. I don't even know if he was charging at all. But he said it gives him an opportunity as he's building his career, able to save money and, you know, make plans for his future. He said, in fact, that guy right there, he's getting married in about 2 weeks. You know, he's engaged and he's about ready to close on a property that he will be moving into once he's married. And he said, once he leaves, I'll take another young Jewish attorney and I'll put him in there and we'll do the same thing. So it helps him out financially. And then he also asked as a mentor to them at the law firm. So I said, so, you know, in New York City, everything is so expensive. I'm talking about uncovered parking is, you know, they pay more for parking space than we pay rent in other parts of the country. So any piece of real estate could be used to make some serious money. You know, he could rent that, he could rent that out for probably a couple $1,000 or more in the area in which he lived. But he was making money. It wasn't about making money to him. See, he said it's more important to be able to help another young Jewish lawyer. He said somebody did that for him. He said, now I'm doing it for these young men. And in time, these young men, when they're in the position, they will do it for other young Jewish lawyers. See, each one helps one. And it's more important to build their community. They're already making money. They ain't worried about making more money. They worried about building that community. And see, this is what we need to start doing in our community. Now, we hear stories like this, and then oftentimes we're very critical of our community because we say, you know, things like this we don't do things like that in our community, and we should. And we definitely need to do it a lot more. But there was one brother that stepped up, and I mean, he stepped up big time. This happened back in 2019 at the Morehouse College graduation. They invited billionaire Robert Smith to come be their commencement speaker. And during his speech, he said something that blew away everybody in attendance. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody but him knew what he was going to say. So I'm talking about administration, the graduates, the parents, anybody that was there was shocked, because in his speech, he said that he would pay the college loan debt for the 400 young men graduating that day. It, like I said, it blew everybody's mind. And I can remember seeing interviews with some of the graduates, and some of these young men were in tears because of this gesture that Robert Smith did. And when it was, they've done follow-up stories, you know, seeing if, you know, see that he's following through with it, and he is. He's following through with this. They tallied everything up, and the loan debt came to be $34 million. So this brother is actually making a $34 million investment in our community. And I'm looking forward to following this for the next 20, 30 years to see what impact that had on those graduates and what that freed them up to be able to pursue. And this investment could pay off many, many more times because of this gesture. So I want to commend Brother Robert Smith. That was amazing. And it also set a good example. Now, maybe we can't make a $34 million investment, but we can look for ways to help those in our community. So, as always, we always like to talk about insurance. So, insurance should always be a part of our financial planning. And so we're just going to go right along with what we've been saying. If we're having our children stay an extra couple years, one thing we want to focus, or when our kids hit of age, our kids are 18 years old, y'all need to get insurance. This is part of the financial planning. And if they're young and healthy, it is so inexpensive. I'm going to throw a couple quotes out to you just so you can see what we're talking about. You give me a healthy 18-year-old male. Now, a whole life policy. This is a policy that they will have the rest of their life, and the premium will not change. So for a $100,000 policy, whole life policy, it would be $58 a month. And like I said, that will never change. And as the years go by, these policies will actually build cash value. The $100,000 for a female, healthy 18-year-old female, would be like $45 a month. Now let's say you want to do a term policy. Term policies are a lot more inexpensive because they're only for a certain period of time. So they could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however you need it to work for you. Oftentimes, it's good to carry the larger term policies while you have children growing up, but once your children are all grown, it's better to convert that over into a whole life policy, a permanent policy. And that would be a little bit more expensive, but like I said, you're covered the rest of your life and you don't need to be covered as much. So for a term policy, an 18-year-old healthy male, we'll take a $500,000 policy. Would be $33 for the male, and the $500,000 policy, term policy for a healthy 18-year-old female would be $22. So at those kind of prices, these are things we need to just start taking care of immediately when they are of age. It should just become a part of our financial planning. Just like the other things we talked about. You know, letting them children stay to build income, maybe moving together to build money. See, like I was saying before, oftentimes we act like we are living in the time of our ancestors. And that's just not the case, because the things, the laws and things that were in place to prevent them from being able to purchase homes and things, they don't exist anymore. I mean, is racism still alive and well? Yes. But there's things that legally they just cannot do anymore. And so if you want to purchase a home and you have the money for a down payment and the good credit, then they cannot deny you purchasing that home. See, back in the day, they could deny that of our ancestors. They can't deny that of us. But the reason today that we don't, we're unable to purchase homes is because we don't have the down payment money and we don't have the good credit. But the things that we're talking about doing today will help us do that. Also, when it comes to credit, there's ways we can help our children improve their credit. So I actually have another video. It's entitled The Homestead Act, How It Built Wealth. Go back and watch that. And there are suggestions on how to improve your credit and help build your children's credit. So we want to make sure we do that also. Well, usually after the insurance, I usually stop the video. But today I want to do something a little different. I want to direct the focus of this discussion to my brothers and sisters in the black community and also my brothers and sisters in the white community. Because when I do research, I really try to do a lot of research and to bring you good information, and especially with the historical things. But one thing I've come to learn with the research that I've done is that we live in two very different Americas. And because of that, we have two very different realities. So if you put a group of people in a room and they're not really educated to facts on a matter, well then all you have to draw from is your personal experiences. And if our realities are very different, well then our experiences are going to be very different. Let me give you an example. Let's take my grandfather and your grandfather. Now, depending on your age, when I say your grandfather, I'm talking about whoever was the World War II vet in your family. So it might be your parents, it might be your grandparents, it might be your great-grandparents. But that's who we're talking about when I say my grandfather and your grandfather. So, very likely, if your grandfather grew up in this country, very likely he was dirt poor. Because that generation, they grew up during the Great Depression. And depending on where your grandfather lived, he may also live through the Dust Bowl in this country. So let's say now there's the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The call goes out, and now your grandfather, 18 years old, he answers the call, joins the military, and goes off to World War II. Well, he's able to come home safely. And when he got home, now, because of this GI Bill, he was able to go to college or to trade school for free. Then also, well, he came back and he fell in love with your grandmother. And now, because of this GI Bill, they were married and they were able to move into a brand new house in a brand new, beautiful subdivision. No down payment, low interest loan. I mean, he had to really be amazed that, like I said, you know, this was a kid that grew up dirt poor. And now he's living a life as a young man that he probably never thought possible. Well, now as the economy takes off, he's able to get a job that pays well because of the skills that he either received by the training, the skilled trades that he went and got, or if he went to college, he's very likely in a management position with this company, making very good money and able to provide for his young family. Now, a man, no doubt, he had to feel tremendous pride for this country. No doubt he told his children, he said, this is the greatest country in the world. And told them children, when you look at that flag, see, that represents this great country. And when you look at that, you respect that flag. You put your hand on your heart. When you say that pledge, that means something. That's what he instilled in his children and his grandchildren. And his children, you know, instilled it in their kids. That was passed down. This is a man at the end of his life, and in later years when he looked back at the amazing life he lived, coming from where he came from. See, America, he looks at that flag, no doubt a tear may roll down his cheek because America was great to him. And see, now that I'm starting to understand better, well, let me put it this way. Before I go there, let me say, now I understand your patriotism more than I did before. But I also want you to think about my grandfather. See, he answered that same call. And he went off and he fought that same war. And when he came back, he was denied everything that your grandfather got. In fact, that beautiful home and subdivision that your grandfather moved into, your grandparents, well, not only was my grandparents denied that, when those homes, when them subdivisions were built, banks were kind of skeptical because this was a new phenomenon. People didn't live in, you know, away from the city. And so they didn't know how this was going to work, so they wasn't sure. They wanted to invest a whole lot of money into it. So the Federal Housing Authority really put up the money for the first subdivisions, and with the stipulation to the contractors that they had to have a covenant that blacks were denied purchasing homes there. And then even went a step further. They made sure that in every contract sold, it had a clause that this home could not be resold or rented to a black family. So when you look at what my grandfather had to deal with, well, see, his attitude towards that flag is really far different than yours, than your grandfather's would be. And so the reason I'm saying this is, when we see things going on in the country like we have been doing, you know, we see Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, the Black Lives Matter movement, instead of being so quick to holler, you know, you shouldn't be disrespecting that flag, and if you ain't happy, go somewhere else. Realize in knowledge that our situation is much different. What you're seeing is frustration. And if the roles were reversed, you would have that same frustration. So I won't be so quick to scream racism when now I understand better your patriotism, and I want you to not be so quick to holler disrespect when you're seeing our frustration. And I think if we start the conversation with that knowledge, well, I think it'll be better for everybody involved. And so that's going to bring it to an end today. I had a good time with you. Once again, I want to thank you, and also ask that if you enjoy it, please subscribe, like, and share. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, you have a wonderful day.